Okay, so hope you all had a great lunch and that you are all energized again for a wonderful afternoon. As this has become a tradition in our global practice, and I hate standing here, I'm going to come down. As it is a tradition in our global practice, we are again in the session of our Shark Tank session. This is a session where we recognize our analytical work, and we have done it in the past. You all found it very useful. We are continue repeating this. I wanted to have some words before introducing the session why we are having this. As many of you know and have heard Jürgen or myself talk to many of you in the past, in 2015, shortly after we became a global practice, the institution started looking at our analytical work in a different way. And as many of you know, in the same way as for investment projects, we have an ICR when the investment project is completed, and then that's the evaluation of the project. For analytical work, we have a process also of reviewing an analytical work when it's completed, and that's done by the clients and by the CMUs. So there's a process of feedback on what our clients and what the CMUs and our clients think of the analytical work we did. In 2015, the results for our global practice were as low as they could be. And that was very unfortunate. That would put us all very sad. We all discussed this in the past many times. I'm just saying this for all those newcomers that haven't heard us about talking about this in the past. And then we took that at heart and we did an action plan to revert that and to look at how we contribute to analytical work in a different way. And we did our plan together, we put it in practice, and we have been implementing it for 2 years with incredible success. And you all know that in last year, we are now above the bank's average on the feedback that we receive from our clients. We are close to bank average in the CMU side. We still want to do more. We want to be the first ones in the institution. We get a lot of good feedback from all the work that you all do when we meet our country directors in the spring meetings and the annual meetings. Without we asking, they come and they tell us all the good work that you are doing. And not only just the analytical work, it's the implication of the analytical work on our policy discussions. Everything that we have been talking this week, I'm sure that you're all thinking at this moment, how do I take it forward? How do I talk about this with my clients? How do I explain this to them? And besides knowing how to do it, because we will all have great communication skills moving forward, the other point is how do we take this into what matters to politicians? How do we engage on the policy dialogue on this? And that's where the analytical work becomes essential for thinking about that future and changing the future in the way we want it to go. So that's why this matters, and this is an opportunity where we have put together this event for all of us to keep on thinking about how do we move with ASAs going forward. Whether you have been part of an ASA this year or you haven't, it doesn't matter. This is a session for all of us to learn, for all of us to keep on learning how do we improve in the way we do this other critical part of the business in the bank. Okay? So the way we did this is the same way as we did it last year. Your manager submitted nominations for the awards that we are going to give today. All those nominations, many of them, I think we had like 18 or around 20, I don't know, something like that, were looked at and reviewed by a group of leads in our GP. So we distributed to them and trying to ensure that there was no conflict of interest, and they were all ranked. Every piece of analytical work was assessed by 4 people, lead specialists or lead economists, and they were ranked. And from that ranking, we came with finalists, with 6 finalists that are the ones that you will hear today. And those 6 finalists are the ones that are going to come in the podium and are going to have an opportunity to discuss the analytical work with the chief economists that we have in front of us. What we want to do with this, as I mentioned, is besides for all of us to share what are our top pieces of analytical work in the year so that we all learn about this. And it doesn't matter, again, if it is something in East Asia, your work in Latin America is extremely relevant too. But also for you to see what matters when we do analytical work. Jürgen and I want all of you to pay attention the questions that the chief economists are going to ask. Why are they asking those questions? Why are they coming with this? Why are they inquiring about this? Okay, this is another way in which we learn what matters. And why are we saying it? It's very easy for all of us to talk to ministers of agriculture. They talk our jargon. They talk in the same way we talk. They care about the same way things we care. The issue we normally have on these things is how do we talk to audiences that are not our immediate audiences. So pay attention to what they ask, look at what they say, look at what they value, and also learn from your colleagues that are going to be here. Before we introduce them, I think that we want to be very grateful to all of you for having come to this final round. This is not an opportunity to scare anyone. Even if we call this a Shark Tank, it's not because we want to put people in a difficult situation. We don't want to do that. We look at sharks as the top of the pyramid, the most sophisticated kings of the sea, and that's why we are here recognizing you. These are also perhaps whale sharks with no teeth and no biting. We have been also thinking about calling this the World Bank Got Talent next year, so it's not just about Shark Tank, it's about who has the strongest talent and learning from each other. We have here colleagues of every single aspect and diversity in our global practice and outside. We have people that have been here in the bank for many, many years. Some of the nominees are people that have joined our institution a couple of years ago. Some of them are from country offices, some of them are from headquarters. So any one of us should be able to engage and to be enthusiastic about doing analytical work moving forward. This is not just for 2 or 3 of us in the GP, this is about all of us, okay? So having said that, let me pass it back to you so we can introduce them. And let me first of all ask for a big round of applause for everyone here, our colleagues and our nominees who are going to come to the podium. Thank you, and enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Ethel. Actually, you should really be worried, I just want to tell you, contestants. So, what happens in a Shark Tank? Well, first of all, you've got, it's a talent show. It's a contest. And here are the contestants, or as we like to call them, the bait. The minnows, sorry, don't get too nervous about this, but do. They are then judged by judges who are the sharks, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. We sort of stole from American, which talent show did, so the judges will be sitting down here, facing here. We're going to get them up in a moment. We're going to have 2 of the contestants to come up and give you a presentation. The judges, the sharks, are going to decide on a couple of questions to then give back to the contestants. At the end of it all, there'll be blood in the water and some winners, but mostly winners. So Sergio, are you okay? Are you looking a little faint? Don't bleed early. It's just honestly though, don't worry, but do. All right, so what we've got here is the sharks. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to come up one at a time and take your seats. First of all, we've got someone who hunts in the shallows. The chief economist for SDPG, we like to call her the tiger shark, Marianne Fay. Oh no! Oh no! All right, I need some audience participation I didn't tell you about. When I go like this, you go, oh no! Sharks, plug your ears for a moment. All right, second audience participation is a tough crowd. There might be the sharks, turn away for a second. There might be this one. And there's something for these guys, which, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a night predator, the destroyer, or as we like to call him, the Great White, chief economist for Middle East and North Africa region, Shanta Devaranja. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you'd get booed. Oh, it's terrible. That is terrible. What a bad crowd this is. Next, we have a shark well at home in the weeds, likes to live in the weeds. The mangler, Sahir Shetty, ladies and gentlemen. Come on up, Sahir. Come on up, come on up. Oh, no! All right. See, I'm not quite so good with my notes yet. Now, finally, last but certainly not least, he's prone to bite anyone randomly. The sawtooth, the lead economist for Latin America, Caribbean region. Please welcome Daniel Lederman. Some energy here. Sorry, guys. But I mean, that's just the way it goes in the Shark Tank. All right, now, I want to call upon the bait to come up. We're going by region. So we have a regional ASA first. We have two presentations, the Greater Mekong Rice Sector Development for Poverty Reduction. Please welcome, just a moment, Sergi. And I know you've got a partner with you, I think. This says wild applause in case you can't read it at the back. Sergi Soria! Sergi's going to be bait twice, so I think he deserves some real applause there. Secondly, reaping richer returns, public spending priorities for Africa, agriculture, growth, my favorite name, Apajita Goya! Wild applause, wild applause! Sergi, you will go first. If you bleed out before the end of your talk, we will take you off stage. The thing is, they only have 5 minutes. They have 5 minutes, and I'm going to be a shark in timing them. Are you ready? Loosen up, okay?
Ready.
Are you ready?
For my slides.
Oh, gee.
Slides, please.
There we go. Sergi, on the count of 5. Do I smell blood in the water? Yes! Sergi, go!
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my honor and pleasure to be here today to present to you the work which was done jointly with IFC. Bas Rosenmuller was my co-detail of this task. The part of the Mekong Rice Policy Dialogue looked on the leveraging rice value chain for poverty reduction in 3 countries, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Just give you a little bit the context, how the idea came out and what is important. Rice is symbolic in Asia. You see the banner hanging in the walls of the Ministry of Agriculture in Myanmar, and it says this all. I think it's applicable to many countries in Asia. The 3 countries we looked at are still the agri-based economies when we use our WDR definition of the agri-based economies. All others moved on, but those 3, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, are still lagging behind, having many common features, but there are differences. Myanmar and Laos are stagnant, not a lot of happening in the rice sector, or has not been happening in the rice sector recently. Labor intensive, still oxen are used in the field. You see on the other hand is Cambodia. Cambodia is the example of the country of dynamic development was development on the on-farm, was development also on the post-harvest side. Cambodian rice was awarded twice as the world best rice, 2012, 2013. When we looked on the poverty reduction performance in Cambodia and Laos, you see Cambodia green, Laos yellow, and you see that Cambodia performed very well compared to Laos. And when we work with the poverty economists, look what actually caused that poverty reduction in Cambodia. 60% explain development in the rice sector in agriculture. And lastly, everybody was watching Thailand at that time. Not only IMF were thinking about what it's gonna cost, what wanna be the fiscal cost of those rice pledging scheme at that time. But the neighbors were looking on the instrument Thais were using to support the agriculture, trying to learn about that experiment, which failed, and as we learned it later. So this was the idea. We wanted to do the South-South learning, to learn from these divergent performances, and we look on the number of questions we wanted to look at. They are listed here. We had the requests from the government, from the private sector, who wanted our facilitation to leverage the discussion with the government. CMU encouraged us to do the World Bank group work and do the regional work. I think on the substance, the key was something new was actually how to save the rice sector as we know it. Because if you think about the rice sector, and in the last 3 days we talked about poverty, climate change, nutrition. Actually, if you don't do it well, that's all what the rice sector is about. But the rice sector can be different and can be used to leverage the poverty reduction. So we wanted to learn those lessons from each country. So when we started to do this work, this is the reality in East Asia and maybe in other parts of the world. Actually, a lot has been already done. So we didn't try to repeat. We take a stock what we already know. We did some new research, but our focus was to actually clarify some things which we saw in the public debate, which we saw we wanted to better understand and help the government to make the decisions on mechanism for rice and poverty reduction. Are high rice prices good or bad for poverty reduction? Rice and nutrition, usually we don't discuss this topic. There are a lot of opportunities to use rice value chain for the better nutrition. We had a very strong World Bank Group team. Was we and IFC plus 5 GPs, was FAO, WFP, and think tanks from Vietnam and Thailand who helped us to deliver and facilitate the South-South learning. It was a different ESW. Usually we write the report and then we do dissemination. Actually, this one was a lot of regional workshops where we used to easy to digest PowerPoint presentation, short policy notes. We did based on that regional workshop in-country workshops, depending on what the countries wanted. And only then we disseminated, and only then we produced the final report. The final report was the summary of our discussions, which was a bit different. That's how we typically do the ESWs. We had a lot of key findings. I think on the left side, I'm not going through them. It's just the exemplary that for each country we identified what is significant, what is not significant, and we identify the areas for the private-public partnerships. When you see this last corner, PPPs, I think the big message for them was also that if you wanted to save the rice sector, if you wanted to really be relevant and address the global challenges like the poverty, climate change, nutrition, you need to look on you need to move from the rice fundamentalism, as my colleague Stephen Jaffa put it, to the really multidimensional approach to food policy. That's how the rice sector can survive and can deliver the benefits. And the final slides on the impacts. We had a lot of impacts. We had a lot of traction from the CMU as a result of this work. There was a lot of internal learning to what rice sector can do, what it cannot do. I think on the interesting thing, what I saw, maybe one example in the Lao PDR, we started to think value chain, which is the change compared to what we had several years ago. When we asked them what kind of the workshop you want after the regional workshop, they asked, we wanted to invite Cambodia Rice Federation to talk about the private sector development. Actually shocking me because this is not the Laos what I knew several years ago. I think it was the very interesting exercise, South-South learning, a lot of GPs and IFC involved, and we had substantial impacts on that. Thank you very much.
Yes, well done. You did it, Sergi. He was about to drop the mic, obviously, but I caught it. No, that was great. Well, that's a pretty good start, isn't it? On time, hitting the points. All these presentations are going to be online, by the way. I think they're already posted. Judges, this is not going to be easy. Now, we're going to go over and get Aparajita in a moment here. Remember, you've got to have between you one good question for each of these for the bait. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here's the pointer. We got this ready to go? Please, give them your best.
Hi, everyone. So I'm the TTL of this Africa Regional Flagship on Agriculture Public Expenditures, and I'm here to tell you why spending better matters just as much as spending more. So we all know that agriculture productivity growth is crucial for poverty reduction in Africa, right? Not only because of the sheer size of the sector in terms of its contribution to GDP and employment, but also because the responsiveness of growth to poverty reduction is estimated to be about 3 times higher for ag than it is for any other sectors. However, we have a problem, right? There hasn't been much overall productivity growth in Africa over the last 20, 25 years. While output has certainly been growing, this has mostly been a result of bringing more land into cultivation rather than input intensification or even TFP growth. And Africa on average has been lagging behind other regions. So this challenge has been recognized by African leaders who are committed themselves to certain targets, right, such as allocating 10% of total public spending to ag and raising the agriculture growth rate to 6% at the country level, known as the Maputo Declaration. So this work was really driven by this operational need to not only try and take stock of where countries are in terms of these targets, but what do we really know about the efficiency and the effectiveness of public spending that can guide decisions about resource allocation in the future? And related to this, the bank has been active in undertaking country-level agricultural PER studies. There have been about 20 of those in the last 7 years. So this was also an opportunity to bring it all together in a regional study and draw the policy lessons from that work. I do want to emphasize that this was very much a collaborative effort of team members from agriculture, from poverty, from TNC, from DEC, along with our external partners from IFPRI, the Gates Foundation, and academia. So our main findings are clustered around 3 broad themes. First, we show that improving the efficiency of current levels of spending is an important element in raising agriculture productivity. We find that there are significant differences in rates of return to different categories of spending, and that there is a need for countries to re-optimize spending towards some of these high-return public good investments. Our emphasis on quality has really shaped the narrative on public spending in the Africa region, as has been reflected in some of the newer SCDs, particularly in Mozambique, Tanzania, and Niger that have gone to the board recently. Second, input subsidy programs have dominated public spending in many countries in Africa, even though on average, their benefits have not been high enough to justify the fiscal costs that these programs have imposed. So in this work, we really try to provide practical recommendations for reforming the design and implementation of these programs to enhance their impact, recognizing that they are important. And they will be in the mix of policy programs implemented by African leaders for some time to come. Our recommendation, particularly in some contexts, on scaling back the total fiscal costs, combining them with complementary investments, and encouraging private sector participation in procurement and delivery have been taken up in the newer DPOs, particularly in Malawi and Zambia. Lastly, there are opportunities for improving the budgetary processes as well. In terms of reducing deviations between how much is actually planned and how much is actually spent between current and capital expenditures and so on. And while political forces obviously to some extent shape the current structure of spending, there are options to discuss or to induce rather smarter, more efficient public spending. These messages have resonated not only with ministers of ag, but more importantly, with a room full of ministers of finance at the last annual meetings during the Vice President's State of the Region. Thank you very much.
Wow. Yes, well done. Yes. Come on, everybody. Yes. First of all, do you know how hard that is? What are these professional presenters? Come on, this is fantastic. You really did well. That was really good. All right, now, don't get too relaxed. It's going to get ugly soon. Just too many devices here. Now, sharks. You've got 2 minutes to huddle together to decide on a question, one for here, one for here. This is actually a partnership exercise. The joke is, how many chief economists does it take to decide who will speak first? So I suggest you go alphabetically, just so we don't have a fist fight. And 2 minutes to confirm. There you go. There, first name or last name. Okay. So 2 minutes. Everybody stand up for 2 minutes. Come on, stand up for 2 minutes. Relax. Thank you very much. Get your. Don't leave. Nobody leave. That's right. That's what happens if you go into the shallows in this game. You guys did well. What? That was so good. That was so good. Counting it down. Shoulder rolls, please. Okay. Okay. Wow, the music is actually so ominous. All right, you're scaring us. Holy smokes. Woo! Nice. Nice. Okay, get them some water. Nobody's bleeding yet, but it's just starting here. You guys did well, man. On time, everything. Okay, thank you. 1 minute to go. 1 minute to go. Actually, these are much better to sit on than those chairs where you're sinking down and just. It's actually really interesting research, though. That's what.
On what?
Well, both of these presentations, yeah.
I thought which kind of chairs are more suitable for this type. But okay, it's very,
Just anything to talk about. All right, judges. Never ask. Now, are we ready? Now we're going to ask the first judge to come up and give their presentation give their question over here, if you don't mind. There's this. Oh, good. You don't need that. So the first question is for
Abarajita.
Barajita. Please go ahead.
Sorry, no, my question is for Sergey. Sorry, I got confused. Yeah, I'm just,
no.
you know.
It's 1, 2. Okay, no.
You know, it's all agriculture anyway, right? So the question to you is, if what you're proposing is successful, I imagine the goal, one of the goals is to increase rice exports. But then what would happen to domestic price of rice, and what would be the net impact on poverty?
Sergey, you have 2 minutes to answer.
Three countries are the net exporters, but they are relatively small countries, so they are the price takers. Cambodia is the evolving exporter. For what I've learned, because I have 2 minutes, so I can be talk. What I've learned.
We'll give you three.
As a Ukrainian, when I came to Asia, I knew about soft wheat and hard wheat. So, but when I think about rice, rice is not rice. There are so many kinds of rice. You can have rice for $300 a ton, and you can have rice for $1,500 a ton, produced in the same country. So the rice market is very segmented, and the countries which can capture those segments, which are higher valued, gonna to stay in business, because per capita world consumption going down. The countries who are net importers actually want to import less. They're all on self-sufficiency mode in the Africa region, especially. So it's very difficult for the net exporters to stay where they used to and produce kind of rice for $300 a ton. So you have the very differentiated market with many products. I think Cambodia is the best position to capture that market. They diversified, low quality, high quality. Myanmar would like to go there. But they are having a lot of institutional and governance issue to improve along the value chain, but they have all agroecological conditions and very strong private sector to go there. So on Laos will stay small, exporting in the regional market, China, in Vietnam. So it will not happen much on the prices because there is market, so they are price takers. There will not be significant impact on the prices, but it will allow. On the poverty reduction side, there are a lot of farmers who are poor producing rice. And if they can move from the $300 per ton rice to $600 per ton rice, they will have the positive rice impact without asking consumers to pay more. Thank you.
Wow, well done, well done. Let's have a round of applause for that. Sergey, this is glittering, looking a little bit in your favor right now. That was a very good answer. Now, second economist. Take to the stage here, please. Did we tell you we're judging the chief economist at the end of all this? No. Okay. Maybe.
No, we're sharks. We're not chief
Oh, yes,
economists.
that's true. Your question,
Okay,
please.
Thanks. So this question is for Aparajita. You show in the report and in your presentation as well that improvements in efficiency are more important than increasing spending. But suppose you couldn't get those improvements in efficiency. Then would you recommend reducing spending?
Wow. Oh, boy. These are not softball questions, ladies and gentlemen. I heard a little booing on that one, and I didn't even hold up a sign. All right. Woof. Man, oh, man. Madam, over to you. Just start speaking and give us your best.
That's a great question.
Well done.
I mean, we tried to be a little provocative in the report in that, you know, we don't necessarily want to say that the 10% target is a bit of a distraction, and that, you know, if countries are going to try and spend on the wrong things by just trying to meet that volume target. So in that vein, I mean, I think there is a balance between increasing quantity and increasing quality. And if it's not entirely clear to me why there would not be any efficiency gains. Is it because you cannot move your money from less effective to more effective programs? Because presumably that's something that countries could always could do, or they could allocate across different functions that have been shown to be more productive than others. So yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that would be that would be my answer. Thanks.
And I think we've just identified your next research project. Well done, well done. Big hand of applause. You can take your seats. Big hand of applause. Thank you very much. You can take your seat. Yep. Now, you can go down and take your seats now. I know you don't want to get into the water again, but I'm afraid these sharks are not gumming anyone, are they? No. Right. Next up, we're going to the ASA in non-fragile states. First up, we've got Steve Jaffe. Please take the stage with a wild round of applause. Steve Jaffe. He's going to be doing Transforming Vietnamese Agriculture, Gaining More from Less. Let's get a duo up on the stage, adding an extra twist here. Let's welcome Norman Piocini, Augusto Garcia, the Latin American connection. Yes. Yeah, the sharks are getting hungry now that they see three on stage. All right, gentlemen, you know the rules. We're going to start off with Steve. We've got 5 minutes. Then you're going to confer questions, the whole drill. Are you ready, my friend?
I am ready.
Let's start the ball now.
Good afternoon, peers and sharks. This was a joint venture between the bank and a policy institute affiliated with the Ministry of Agriculture. The substance is interesting, but actually the process of engagement before, during, and after was much more important. So Vietnam is a success story, generally on a development scale. Sustained growth over 20 years, big reduction in poverty, growth in the consumer class is very rapid now. Connectivity in rural areas. Electricity reaches 90% of villages. And international integration through FDI and trade. It's been a success story across the whole board. Agriculture has been a major contributor to this success. That reduction in poverty from like 60% down to 25%, a lot of that was accounted for by agriculture. This is primarily a smallholder productivity story. At the same time, Vietnam has gone from being a country of hunger to society that's eating all the time. It's one of the most food secure and nutritionally secure of Southeast Asia. And Vietnam's a powerhouse when it comes to commodities, really out of nowhere over the past 20 years. Yet there's growing concerns about the quality and sustainability of this agricultural growth. The gap between rural and urban incomes is widening very quickly. This boom in exports has been sort of at the bottom end of the market. Vietnam's getting discounted in most commodity markets. At home, consumers are losing confidence in the safety of the food. And this expansion has really come at a very high environmental cost. It's been both an extensification and an over-intensification process. So despite the past successes, Vietnamese agriculture is really at a crossroads now. We have the growth rates are declining year by year. We have an aging farming population and a youth that's looking elsewhere for livelihood. The urban areas are now competing and the hydropower plants, so we have a competition for land and water that wasn't there before. Consumer expectations are changing very rapidly, and the sector has been lagging in responding to that. And there's a growing realization that a state-led agriculture is not going to deliver going forward. This recognition really led to what became the agricultural restructuring plan that was put together in 2013 and 14, which we were a part of. that plan really laid out sort of a new set of goalposts for agriculture, really built around sustainable agriculture. Yet the roadmap was rather fuzzy. Actually, the English version of this, it was less fuzzy, but when translated into Vietnamese, there was a bit of a backlash from the bureaucracy. So the roadmap became a little bit more fuzzy. So this work was started in order to fill in some of that gap. We actually started, it was a very modest, we were going to be a very modest input into the Vietnam 2035 report. We were going to contribute to 2 chapters. We overshot a bit. And in the process, the country director and the lead economist decided that the next year's annual thematic report for Vietnam would be on this theme of agricultural transformation. We had a very strong foundation to build on. We had this partnership with IPSAR that had gone back 6 years of sort of multiple pieces of analytical work, as well as other institutions. We were able to build on a series of AAA work that had been done in country and regionally that was just sort of coming to the fore at around this time. So we had an iterative process. We did some homework first. We did a lot of benchmarking of Vietnam against its peers. We dove a little bit more into the Ag Census, some other surveys, and laid this out. We then had a series of roundtables, and basically we asked the people around the table, this was business people, academics, what's your aspirations? What do you want agriculture and the food system to look like in 2030? And what do you want to avoid happening by then? All right? We did this in several parts of the country, so we got a different sense in different regions. And we probed a bit on what the group felt were the institutional and policy constraints of getting from here to there. We then went back, we did some more analysis, we then harvested a whole series of international good practices in the areas that were identified as areas needing institutional reform. We then went back, we confirmed some of the priorities with the same group of stakeholders. So what came out of the early meeting was the sort of concept of more from less. Essentially, the achievement in the past had been more and more inputs, more and more land, and more output. And so the orientation is much higher level of rural welfare, consumer welfare, and value addition, but in the process using less land, less water, less intensive input use, having less waste, and having a less of an environmental footprint. Vis-a-vis government, the sort of theme of the government to lead less and facilitate more. And the government had played a very important role historically. They were administratively controlling land. They were heavily involved in the market for commodities and for inputs. So we probed this in a whole variety of areas. None of this was sort of nuclear physics, but for the Vietnamese government, this sort of challenged conventional practice and conventional thinking. So these were some of the areas: land, water, innovation systems, very traditional areas. And we've sort of laid out where you are now, what are some good practices that are already happening in the country, and where there are examples internationally that you can adapt as you move forward. In terms of impacts, in terms of strategy, last year the government put together a sort of a plan for sort of 2030 of promoting private investment in agriculture. Some of that took some of the ideas we had about the enabling environment. The government has come to the bank. It is a PHRD grant now for fleshing out the indicators, M&E, for this agricultural restructuring plan. So again, that's sort of the goalposts. In terms of policy, our partner IPSAR has sort of taken a lot of the ideas on related to land, related to market development, to their contacts in the party, and some of that's been adopted. And currently we're in discussion with government on a DPO, covering a range of policy and institutional areas that many of the themes were sort of laid out in this AAA. In terms of lending, the sort of concept of more from less really became the ethos of our Vietnam Sustainable Agricultural Transformation Project, where we're focusing on sustainable rice and sustainable coffee. And there have been a few spillovers, basically the benchmarking work, the international examples we've been using very heavily in our engagement in Indonesia. And the concept of more for less is now appearing in the SCD for Cambodia.
Yes, Steve Jeffrey, ladies and gentlemen. Well done, well done. All right. Now, judges, we have another presentation. This is interesting. I don't know if this is in the rules, but here it is. Two together. Gentlemen. Yeah, you can use here. And there's the clicker. You've already been introduced. Are you ready? Go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a reminder for our friends here, the fish are friends, not food. So we're split the presentation, August and I, and actually Steve has a role too because he was a peer reviewer of the study. So just to put things in context a little bit, Nicaragua is a small country in Central America, in that strip of land that connects North and South America. And it has a multi-ethnic population, although most speak Spanish, and it has a famous and turbulent history of political unrest. The economy is traditionally agriculture-based, and some of the key commodities like meat and coffee are export-oriented, and they're the primary source of foreign currency. Because of its characteristics, Nicaragua is a small, open economy, and therefore it's vulnerable to external price shocks and weather events. The relevance of the study is that it tried to directly link to the current government priorities. The government of Nicaragua, the new administration, wants to aggressively reduce income inequality and improve nutrition for a large segment of the population. You can see some of the numbers there, whose overwhelming majority lives in rural areas and whose main source of livelihood is agriculture-based. Smallholder agriculture dominates the rural scene in terms of inequality, low income, and food insecurity, especially in the East Coast, where most of the indigenous and the Afro-descendant minorities are living. So the country economy relies on agriculture, but the small size of the economy and the geographical position of Nicaragua makes it particularly vulnerable to extreme weather risks and to climate change. This is a projection that was done as part of the study. Most disruption in the economy in the past several years have been caused by drought, flooding, catastrophic events, hurricanes, and so on. Projected changes in the precipitation, like in this picture here, in precipitation and temperature in the next 15 years, show a major impact on the economy. This is all the Central American countries are particularly prone to this type of risk. So the questions that were coming that were emerging constantly in our dialogue with the government were typically what drives agriculture growth, which is a typical one, but then why should we invest in agriculture? And where are the best returns, since our budget is very limited? What kind of policies can we apply to small producers? How can we tailor these policies? And how do we cope with extreme weather and climate change? So the report focuses on 5 specific areas that are self-standing. Each one of them actually can be seen as a sub-report. One looks at the performance of the sector vis-a-vis the stated policy goals and especially the trade policies. The second calculates the expanded agriculture GDP. The third identifies some of the key bottlenecks to increase competitiveness. The fourth builds a typology of producers. And the fifth proposes policies and dynamic information and proposes a dynamic information framework to manage extreme weather and climate change risks. You continue.
And now let me share with you some of the key findings that we shared with the client. And one of them was really surprising, the real contribution of the agriculture GDP to the rest of the economy once the value addition and forward linkages were accounted for, jumped from 17 to 27%. This is relevant not only to rethink the share of public expenditures, but also because it shows the importance of building resilience in an economy that is largely influenced by the agriculture sector. an analysis of the agriculture competitiveness showed also that the problem is not production but the cost of transportation and logistics, as post-harvest losses, high transportation costs, cumbersome border procedures, and poor port infrastructure have a major influence on the cost structure of agriculture products. Investments in all of these areas will pay high returns in terms of improved competitiveness. Now, the other work we did as part of this study was related to a typology of producers. Since the current administration in Nicaragua took the office, their social agenda has been very proactive, and admittedly the biggest headache of our counterpart, the Minister of Finance, has been how to effectively deal with the agricultura familiar, or the so-called small family farming. This segment of the population is overwhelmingly rural and is where the biggest gain in the social agenda can be accomplished. For this purpose, the report offered a typology of a small family farming based on census data, a census that we were supporting as well as a bank with Canadian funding. Each of the three types of family farming are geolocated, and that typology allowed for the identification of differentiated policies and public interventions. As agriculture is the key sector of the Nicaraguan economy, the occurrence of risk events has an impact on the growth of the economy, public finances, and the performance of value chains, and of course of food security. So the government is now well aware of the need to move from their traditional reactive strategy based on ex-post action to a more proactive strategy based on data, best practices, and what is their priority, adaptation. So as part of the study, we also started proposing some operational solutions. One of them is a concrete action to improve Nicaragua's resilience and decision-making. The report introduced the concept of a dynamic information framework, the DIF, that pulls together existing and public information from various sources and allowed simulation and scenarios analysis. As a follow-up, the government is now working with the University of the State of Washington, a trust fund managed by our GP, to develop a dynamic information framework, and it is actually becoming a reality and is very well received by policymakers in Nicaragua. This is all. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Thanks very much. Great. We're done. Who knew it? All right, come on. A better applause than that, everybody. Let's really, come on. Let's really, my goodness. Now, sharks. You've got 2 minutes. Get together. If there's any fisticuffs, I'm breaking you up. Shake it out. Come on. Talk amongst yourselves. Nobody leave the room. What? Yes. One question each. Thank you. By the way, we want to thank Jürgen for hand chiseling each of these in his basement. Unfortunately, he used child labor, but we still appreciate the sentiment, Jürgen. Thank you very much. It's the thought that counts, Jürgen. Thank you. Well, you're almost done the painting. All right, judges, can we have the first questionnaire up here, please, sir? If you could come here and direct your question is going to who?
My question is going to my friend Steve
Aha.
Jaffe on Vietnam. So it's a great slogan, less is more. How do you deal with the risk that when you take this 15-year perspective, that they do what any rational government does, which is do less up front, hoping that someone else will do the more later?
Just before Steve says something, I mean, woo! I'm glad that wasn't me having to answer, but I know you can do it, Steve.
I don't think there's any risk in Vietnam of that happening. I mean, the Vietnamese, when they get convinced and get their mind around something, they go in with 2 feet, 2 hands, 3 feet, and 3 hands. We had a reformist minister. He's now moved on to bigger and better things. And so he's started the movement on a lot of these areas and sort of pushed through to his deputies and to the provinces a lot of the ideas on the sort of more sustainable agriculture. So we're seeing sort of different speeds happening. In the Mekong Delta, a number of the provinces are moving well ahead. They're experimenting, they're engaging the private sector much more. They're seeing the sustainable angle as a sales point going forward. They're changing the way they spend money. And in some cases, we're working with them, in some cases not. Then we have laggards that will lag probably, and little is changing there. And I think given the decentralized structure, that's going to happen. But I think, look, it's a valid question because there's really been no crisis. It's this sort of slow leak that's crept on. Luckily, they couldn't sell the rice last year. Luckily, they get pushback from buyers on the fish side. So pressures do come. And when people when you have farmers or you have overseas buyers that are advocating, then you're tending to see more movement, and they do it at scale. Particularly, we're seeing this very much in the Mekong Delta. We're seeing a process of consolidating farms, trying to subsidize more of the clean practice now, so using money in a very different way. So I think there'll be pockets that will hold back, but I think overall I don't see the risk.
Yes, Steve, I think you handled that extremely well. Thank you very much. Well done, well done. Now, who's next to ask the next question? Daniel, do your best. Do your best. Oh, I forgot to boo Daniel, but I guess you're getting away with it this time.
You can boo now.
Yeah, you can boo now. Wait.
So Norman and Augusto, congratulations for making it all the way to this final. We were concerned about the large number of small farms that where a lot of the poor people that live in multidimensional poverty live in Nicaragua, in rural areas. And for the super poor, small family farms, about 40% of producers, you are proposing support programs. We're wondering about your thoughts about how you make support programs for small family farms. How do you design them in such a way that they don't create incentives for them to remain small, inefficient, and poor? In other words, by providing support to small family farms, aren't we condemning their children to a long life of extreme rural poverty?
Yes. Thanks very much. There's no easy questions in the Shark Tank here. Would you like to start? Give you 3 minutes. I know you can do it.
Yeah. Well, we're not proposing in the report just support programs, but I think it's important to recognize that when it comes to an extreme low size of the farmland, and not just the farm size, by the way. I mean, we go by farm size here, but other factors that influence. To invest in agriculture is probably not an option to take them out of poverty. We have seen this in the past. We have tried with agriculture programs that work until the program is there, but then they fall back into poverty simply because there is a minimum scale that needs to be achieved. So it's important to recognize at least that this situation exists. Try to have a number attached to it in terms of percentage. We did some interesting maps that geolocate where these producers are based, and that many happens to be, by the way, in a whole area that is called the Corredor Seco, where there are extremely harsh conditions. And this type of programs that could range from safety net programs, CDD, etc., don't have as a goal to improve their agriculture, and therefore creating that sort of perverse incentive to continue to do what they're doing, rather the opposite. It can either be a knowledge that, well, there isn't really much that we can do, but at least we support them, or much better, training, some sort of employment generation in the local areas, and try to find ways if the current family and even better the next generation can be redirected towards a more productive type of livelihood.
Augusto.
Yes, just a couple of comments in regards to this. I think that the one of the value part of the value add of this analysis with the government, and we did it closely with them, with some of the decision makers in the government, including the Minister of Finance and the leaders of this public sector, agriculture public sector. This is a question, a very actual question for the government, because they have been investing a lot over the first 6-7 years of Ortega's administration in Managua to prioritize this segment of agriculture. But they now came up to a point when they want to think about the role of the middle size agriculture, and how this agriculture, what we call transitional and economy or more commercial agriculture can play a role to pull somehow the other portion of the agricultural sector in Nicaragua to, for example, help generate jobs for that population, combining with the social protection policies that the government is, again, with other bank team reviewing at the moment. So it's all about a combination of policies that we are trying to propose. Some of them from the angle of agriculture, but certainly we will have the chance to continue working on this with our, I would say, main products after this study, which is the preparation. We are starting right now the preparation of a new IDA project on resilient agriculture in the dry corridor of Nicaragua. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think issues really resonating for all of us. I'm looking at my Ethiopian colleagues. Gentlemen, you may go. Big round of applause. You cannot applaud enough for your colleagues to be up here putting themselves on the line. And I've already drafted your performance review, Steve, so you can see me. No. Next, the final round. And guess what? Sergi is back. Come on up, Sergi. Round 2, he gets special. I'm going to even give him one of these because he's doing it twice. Sergi, you come on up. Secondly, Joanne Gaskell, who gets another big round of applause. Wild applause. Come on. Because Joanne has also been doing an amazing job coordinating all the note-taking and synthesis, so I'm very, very appreciative. All right, here we go. Thank you for the clicker. We're getting all the pieces in place. Now, judges, remember, after this, you've got to decide. I mean, they're all winners, obviously, but then you have to have a little bit of rationale for why you, and I suggest you go with dress sense. But, yes. Sorry, Sergi. No, I mean, what can I say? So, Joanne, you're up first. Strategies to increase agriculture productivity in Mali's dryland. Madam,
Thank you.
are we ready?
Is this on?
That one's on, yes.
Great. All right. So first, I want to thank my co-authors for this report, Mansour Ahmed and Madhur Gautam, both of whom are in the room, both of whom traditionally work in South Asia. So this was really a global effort, this project. It started in 2015. I was sitting in the country office in Mali in Bamako. We'd just come back from a bunch of field visits in the context of the SCD, and we still couldn't answer some really basic questions about Mali's ag sector. Why aren't farmers planting larger areas? Why are yields so low? And then my colleague Johannes Hugeveen shared with me a new household survey that was focused on the ag sector. And as I started to scroll through it, I realized that the survey was asking a lot of those very same questions. So fast forward, a year later, we had an ASA proposal, we had a clean data set, and we were raring to go.
All right. I think I'm going to, let's see, we might need a new one of these guys again, do we? Could we, there we go. Yeah, maybe. All right,
Okay.
good.
Thank you. So you saw this slide a bit in Aparajita's presentation, but what I want to show you is where Mali is. So unlike most countries in sub-Saharan Africa, agriculture has been a powerful driver of poverty reduction and economic growth in Mali. At 2% per year, total factor productivity growth has been on par with South Asia. But there are signs that the productivity growth in the ag sector is running out of steam, and moreover, there's substantial regional variation in productivity within the country. So we decided to focus our analysis on one region in particular where productivity growth has been sluggish. That's the dryland region. Now, the dryland region is important for three reasons. The first is poverty. It has high incidence of poverty. It houses a third of the poor in Mali. The second reason is climate vulnerability. The dryland region has the lowest rainfall and the highest rainfall variability of any cropping region in Mali. And the third reason is conflict. As we heard during the FCV panel on Tuesday, climate-related shocks can contribute to forced migration, internal conflict, and political fragility. Al-Qaeda is active in the dryland region in Mali, and Mali has the deadliest UN peacekeeping mission in the world. So if we can address productivity constraints in Mali's dryland zone, we can address some of these conflicts at their root. So is there potential for dryland agriculture, or is it just too dry? The LSMS is a very rich data set to answer these questions. These are some of the variables that we used in our analysis. When we started talking about the results of our study to colleagues in other GPs, they became interested in looking at other aspects of the data set. In MFM, the relationship between access to credit, rural credit, and productivity, or in the environment GP, relationships between land degradation and poverty. In our study, the model we used is called a stochastic production frontier model. It allows us to measure two things. The first is, what is the marginal response of output to different inputs? So where are we on the slope of this curve for different inputs? And the second is, where are we in relation to the production frontier? So if this dot is an individual farming household or farmer, how far inside the curve are we? And what are the factors that can move us closer to the production frontier? This methodology is useful within the bank, it's useful in our discussions with clients, but it's also interesting to the broader academic community, and we've submitted a version of our paper to the annual bank conference on Africa at UC Berkeley. So I'm going to highlight three findings. The first is that inorganic fertilizer has no appreciable impact on productivity in Mali. This is true across crops, and it's true across cropping zones. The marginal benefit of chemical fertilizer is lower than even the subsidized value of fertilizer. Now, this is an alarming finding because Mali spends $40 million a year on fertilizer subsidies. So there's evidence of fiscal and productivity gains to be had from reforming the National Input Subsidy Program. And indeed, our study is informing an ongoing DPO in Mali that aims to do exactly that. The second finding is related to climate-smart agriculture. So fertilizer overuse is in and of itself a CSA opportunity. We found evidence for two other triple wins. practices that increase productivity, resilience, and carbon sequestration. The first is that positive returns from organic fertilizer use, and the second is that no-till technology provides significant productivity benefits, much as has been the experience in countries like Brazil. The third result I'm going to highlight is related to farm efficiency. Dryland farmers are further from the technical production frontier than in other regions, farmers in other regions of Mali, controlling for agroecological characteristics. So on the x-axis here, we have technical efficiency, and on the y-axis, the percentage of farmers. And you can see in red, this is the southern higher rainfall, higher productivity zone. The dotted line is the average for Mali, and this blue mass is the dryland zone. You can see it's shifted to the left. The average farmer in Mali's dryland zone is only half as productive as the best farmer. And this is evidence, this is a strong argument for improved agricultural extension services in the dryland zone. There are many other findings. I don't have time to highlight them now. I urge you to read the report. Results related to transport bottlenecks have helped to expand the scope of a transport lending project in Mali to include the dryland zone. The findings are relevant not only in Mali, they'll be presented to ministers from all 5 countries that are members of the CMU at the upcoming annual meetings. Our key conclusion is that while in the long run, agricultural productivity may be bounded by geography, in the short run, there remains significant unexploited potential to boost farmers' incomes in the drylands. Thank you.
Way! Whoa! Oh man, it's getting better and better, isn't it? Well done. All right, Sergi, loosen up, loosen up. We've got to get you going here.
I took my coat off, so I'm different now.
Okay. Now we don't even have a microphone. Can you shout?
I need my...
I put it over here. All right, Sergi. And honestly, giving it twice, I have to say. Now, that was a very good presentation. You're under pressure. Don't feel it, though.
Thank you very much.
Are you okay? Let's go.
You plan next vacation in Myanmar. It's a beautiful country. It has Bagan, it has Shwedagon. It's a very spiritual place. On the other hand, it's also a very fragile country. It's a country with the high poverty and stunting rates. It's with the labor-intensive farming is not mechanized yet. It's coming around Yangon and Mandalay, but the remaining part of the country very labor-intensive and low level of technologies. This low level development can be traced by the long history of isolation, conflict, and the military rule. So the Myanmar opened up in 2011, and the bank re-engaged, and it's re-engaging in the huge knowledge gap. And just to demonstrate how the huge knowledge gap is, one of our sharks actually went with Victoria to the board very recently, talk about the EAP update, and this graph there, it has the shared prosperity numbers, and Myanmar is not there. So 6 years after their engagement, we are still struggling to get in the data right. So we did this programmatic. It was the programmatic ASA, and the main objective was to begin filling this knowledge gap, and also to inform in our re-engagement, as we moved quite fast and we had not good data to make informed decisions. We picked the 4 topics. We worked on the rice value chain. We worked on the rice price volatility, on the options to reform Myanmar Agricultural Development Bank, and analysis of farm production economics. This topic were carefully selected with the government. They were also selected with strategic partners. LIFT is a multi-donor trust fund there. It was also RAS. It was programmatic RAS combined, and so they finance the most of this work. And we look on the fragility context, which really topics matter for right now for this country, and issues like the food price volatility, or jobs and private sector development, or the Bill Partnership on Development. Our partnership with LIFT and other donors was the exemplary in that respect. So we spend a lot of time on collection of primary data. We don't do it in many countries. We leave it to IFPRI, to MSU, and the other partners. There we had to go. We had to do that. When we entered the country, we thought we have 62 million people. In 2015 census said we have 52 million people, 10 million people out of equation. That's actually a lot of food when you think about it. So if you look on the rice balance, the government was saying we produce 19 million tons, And if you would calculate how much stocks they would have, it was 7 million tons. 7 million tons is the export of Vietnam. But USDA, with the alternative data, would say stocks are close to zero. So there was a lot of the areas for us to look at, and we had a strong collaboration with Myanmar Rice Federation, with the private sector, to validate and be relevant. We also focus on the policy options suitable for Myanmar. Fragile, small fiscal space, weak government capacity, next exporter of rice, because recommendations can go in different way depending on what your capacity is. On the client engagement, because again it's fragile country, our main client for our GP, Ministry of Agriculture, no question about it. We engage them heavily in the concept and in dissemination, but in their participation in preparation was very weak. When you are in the military rule for so long, you want to be invisible. As the government officer, you want to be invisible. You don't want to stand in front of minister. So that culture is still there. It's very difficult to engage. It's slow, it's gradually changing. But if we were entering that phase, we had to find the partners. And we found many champions. There are many people outside Ministry of Agriculture, also Ministry of Commerce, Permanent Secretary, personally was interested on issues of food price volatility, because he was the one who was asked to do the emergency stocks, and he wanted to figure out how to do it. Also, agricultural sector donor working group was important. Economic advisors to the president. Economic advisor to the president chaired the meeting on the rice price volatility. So, and then we work with the academia. Last slide on the findings. Not gonna bump you with the findings of 4 reports. There are a lot of opportunities. If you look on the graph in the middle, it's the rice price profitability in monsoon and dry season in Myanmar compared to other countries. You see Myanmar is lagging behind, and there is no reason for them to lag behind. It's actually easy wins there can be gained, and there's a lot of opportunities there. They have the one strength. They have very resilient and strong private sector. That private sector, which survived so many military and socialist governments, still deliver. I think it's very, very strong partner in our engagement in Myanmar. There are challenges which needs to be overcome. On the impact, I would say I put it at the number 1. Maybe I'll still say it as number 1. The Multi-Donor Trust Fund, LIFT, its livelihood and food security trust fund. They agreed to finance the second phase of our analytical work, which is agricultural public expenditure reviews in Myanmar and analysis of production economics revisited. So maybe I'll see you again in 2 years. Let's see. Myanmar Agricultural Development Bank is under reform. We were the first who came to analyze, and it's now transferred to Ministry of Finance, and there are a lot of discussions of how this state bank is to be reformed. We informed the public debate on minimum farm prices. They were almost adopted in the country twice. And the last time there was a discussion about them, and the minimum farm prices for the next exporter is the disaster. For the net importer, okay, it's fine. You can talk about the fiscal cost, but for the net exporter, you essentially cannot export if you have minimum farm prices. And so we put these arguments, and in 2016, when this issue came back again, and the permanent secretary of commerce gave the interview, he gave our bullet points, and I think that's what the impact we saw. So it's still not introduced, and the results of the farm production economics study, which we've done, is now used by the Michigan State University to develop training courses for students of Yizin Agricultural University. I think these kind of impacts were visible, and I would like to thank the team, especially Pavo Elister, who started this, who had a very difficult discussion with the donors to attract funds and with the government to attract attention. Thank you.
Woo! Yes, well done. The presentations are done. Well, you're not quite out of the water yet, but these were, come on, let's really give them a round. Let's really give them a round. Well done, really, well done, well done. Okay, so judges, this is your last chance to confer on the questions. Cue the music, talk amongst yourselves, and then one question each, and then we'll go into the judgment. Yes. Stand up, move around, but don't go anywhere. 2 minutes. That's right. Yeah. All right. Spooky music. Now, we don't have. Do we have any more presentations? No. So I'm walking this over here. So one question each. Good. Good. Yeah. Honestly, by the end of it all, I'm really. Isn't it hard looking into these lights? Right. I'm telling you, I was saying to the other guys, I'll never drive at night again. It's my ruin my eyesight. For the video. Yeah. I just changed my prescription in 1 week. I should have been wearing sunglasses. Why didn't I do that? The sharks are debating. It's on. Because they have to absorb it. They have to listen and react. It's a lot of information. All right, chief shark economists, are you ready? Who is asking the first question, please? It's the Great White himself. Yes. All right, are we ready? Tell us who it's directed to.
Thank you. Yes, this question is for Joanne. The bottom line in your report is that in order to solve the problems of dryland agriculture in Mali, you need to fix the agricultural subsidies, the fertilizer subsidies, and then most of the other solutions lie outside of agriculture, like transport and terrorism and so on. So the question is, first, why is it so difficult to remove agricultural fertilizer subsidies throughout Africa, but including in Mali? And secondly, how can you use this report to actually get some action in those other sectors which are required in order to improve agricultural productivity in Mali?
Thank you. So two questions really. I'll start with how do we induce change maybe outside of the ag sector? I think one of the fun things about this report was that it really did engage a lot of different GPs. We looked at data from ICT, cell towers, we looked at health shocks, and we talked with the program leader for health about, okay, what health shocks are those likely to be, and is it about access to services or the quality of those services? And I think, through collaborations with our colleagues at the bank, we're changing investment operations in other GPs. I gave the transport example. So I would say leveraging our colleagues really in their dialogue with different aspects of the government. It starts at home. And on reforming the fertilizer subsidy, obviously there's a big political economy. There again, it's about dialogue. We had this conversation yesterday actually about changing how we talk about subsidies so that we take into account what are the objectives of the government and how can we help the government achieve those objectives. So the finance minister is very interested in saving money. And I think we're starting where we have success through the Western Agricultural Productivity Project with these pilot e-voucher systems, which are a more efficient, more information-rich way to deliver and target subsidies. And we're also providing alternatives, right? Increase the value of seed subsidies, for example, would be much more cost-effective. So I think through our dialogue with the government and with the opening that the DPO gives us, we're going to get there.
Take that, sharks, right? Take that, sharks. All right, let's have the second question. Please come up. That's a pretty good answer, my goodness. Now, don't trip over the water bottles.
Okay, this is for Sergey on Myanmar. So on one of the things you had looked at there was on rice exports. And you made the point that this is a fragile country. After all, this was a country where we got the population wrong by about 20%. leading up to the last census. So take a couple of your recommendations from the rice export thing and walk us through how you think that analysis that led up to that recommendation, as well as how you think those recommendations should be implemented, take account of the fragility of this country and in fact, the sort of the specific fragility aspects.
And you can hand him the microphone. All right, Sergi.
Thank you, Sudhir. Fragility is an important part of thinking of the farming. What in the situation without fragility, for example, we would want to see farms diversified, mechanized, go to the higher value much faster, and work with the private sector much faster. In the fragility situation, we need to better understand the needs, and we need to understand that the public sector is weak, and the delivery of key services like the good seeds, good extension services, good irrigation system, who does not put the primary infrastructure, but do the on-farm infrastructure. So these improvements in public services will be gradual. So we need to work more in this current in the current environment. We need to work more with the enabling environment for the private sector, which is in the rice sector. It's specifically rice mills. If they are strong, they can drive growth. They can drive growth to a certain level. Cambodia experience showed. If you go from very low yields, they can bring you there, you double your yields. But if you want to reach Thailand and Vietnam in terms of efficiency, then you need more than just a little bit in a better enabling environment for the rice mills. But where Myanmar is right now, so getting enabling environment for the rice mills, removing the constraints for the foreign direct investment that they can give the fresh capital, removing enabling the other companies compete with MAPCO, which is the state-owned enterprise, and starting to work with the government to gradually improve the quality of services, and make sure that there is the common understanding why you need the very transparent commitment to open trade. You are the net exporter. The 10 million, the 20% less population automatically means you have more rice. The Myanmar producing surplus, and they will increase that surplus. But every time there is a small shock to prices, discussion in the government, we need to put the export ban, maybe we need to have some arrangement with the MRF. Because of fragility, it's normal that we have that there is this kind of discussion, and we shouldn't force ourselves for the government of Myanmar to be liberal from the day one. They need to be sensitive on understanding of pros and cons of certain trade measures that trickle down to farmers at the end of the day. So in the more or less fragile economy, I guess less push on the quality of public services would be justified. But where you have fragility, you need to look where opportunities are and make sensible policy recommendation and work with the different parts of the government. Thank you.
Good. Woo! You're done. Thank you very much. Thank you, presenters. Thank you. Wow. Again, a final round of applause. You can take your seats. That was really well done, huh? That was great. No, don't boo them. Yes. I'm telling you, you did so well. You are no longer bait. You are now minnows. So I want to congratulate you. Now, sharks. The pressure's all on you now. You have 5 minutes to confer and pick your 3 winners. The rest of you, hang on. I have a little job for the rest of you. Please go ahead and confer. Now, I'm going to ask a few random people to read out a few of these cards I had presented to me. So don't all run away at the same time. Let me see here. Madam, could you read this out for me, please? Yes. Can you stand up? Stand up. These are cards on the International Women's, and we're not going to get all women to read them, but suggestions. So I'd like you to read this one for us. Would you mind? It's not my fault if you can't read the handwriting. Tell us who you are.
Provide leadership. And what is this? Training?
Let's try it
Workshop
together. Provide
for
leadership
training workshop for female young professionals.
Yeah.
Discussions with senior staff to navigate within the YB and within clients.
Right, so this is a recommendation for specific training and support to young female professionals. Thank you very much. All right. Let me go over and pick somebody else. Most of the handwriting's quite bad, by the way. So look at everybody looking away, but look at I'm walking right over here, sir. All right, can you stand up and read this for me? Oh, yeah. Nobody leave. You're all under attack now. Yes. Now tell me who you are, sir.
My name is Dubi Abimbola. I work at the Liberia Country Office.
Excellent. Liberian Country Office. Now, if you can't read this, don't blame me. This is another comment, but let's hear what it says.
Nest Brom.
Yeah, at the next forum.
At the Nest Forum.
Whose handwriting is this? At the next forum.
At next
we're doing
forum.
this together. We're doing this together.
Organize a session on
Gender versus
sex
slash
social constructs, and unconscious bias.
Yeah.
To raise awareness of cultural norms and stereotypes and how to question our biases instead of promoting them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, that's also very good. Very good. Yes. Let's applaud. Let's applaud. Let's applaud. Madam, could you stand up? I know, this is terrible, isn't it? But at least you didn't know it was coming, so this is good. Now, this is another suggestion. Who are you, by the way?
I'm Anuja Kar. I'm an economist with the Global Engagement Unit, also working with the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program.
Whew, your business card must be very long.
Yes,
okay.
it is.
Please read this out for us.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm a practitioner of M&E and impact evaluation, so it's very interesting for me. But I have not written it. Develop a toolkit Q&A of important considerations and lessons learned for your female staff.
I think that's young.
That's young? Oh.
Whose
For
handwriting is
young
this?
female staff,
Yeah.
provide a group of mentors helping to
Navigate. To provide a group of female mentors to help navigate. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, let's applaud. Let's applaud. Let's applaud. I have one more here that I think I'll read out. And this is, are you guilty of mansplaining? Have you heard about this? Mansplaining. And this is good. It's a bit funny, but also good. You may want to ask yourself the following. 1. Are you playing devil's advocate? 2. Are you devising hypotheticals? 3. Are you giving unsolicited advice? 4. Are you treating your opinions as facts? 5. Are you explaining women's behaviors with pseudoscience? Hang on, there's a few of them here. I'm almost done. If you have answered yes to any of these questions, you may be guilty to some degree of mansplaining. And that means, of course, that the man explains to the woman. Definition: to comment or explain something to a woman in a condescending, overconfident, and often inaccurate or oversimplified manner. Men, let's not mansplain anymore. It's over. Mansplaining is history in the World Bank. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for those comments. There are some very good ideas here, and I hope that we will have, this will be more also a serious discussion, especially as a